Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to another tops and flops. Bit late, I know, because it's already, what is it today, the 5th of August or something? But I had to film another video for Sunday, my rankings of the semi-finals, so that had to take priority, and the tops and flops had to wait until today. But anyway, for those of you who might not be familiar, I look at my reading each month and then I pick a couple of books that I would say those are my top reads for whatever reasons, and also a couple that are rather flops, disappointments, or sometimes also books that really anger me. But anyway, the tops and flops of July. And as always, we start the tops and flops with the tops, and within the tops category, with the book that I thought about the most. And that was a book by Louisa Erdrich, published in 2001, a novel, obviously, The Last Report on the Miracles at Little No Horse. And if you're following my channel, you know that I do this Author Spotlight 2020 thing this year, in which I read all of Louisa Erdrich's novels in chronological order, publication date chronological order, and I do that together with Terry, with Terry from Miss Terry B, who hasn't made a video in quite some time. So Terry, go make videos. But I will leave a link to her channel anyway. And this was book number 7, and we both loved it. The book is told in two timelines, 1996 and then another timeline starting in 1912 and going on until it reaches 1996. The main character is Father Damien, a priest working on a reservation of the Ojibwe people. And the 1996 timeline is mostly discussions between Father Damien and another priest who comes to visit because maybe there is a saint somewhere. I'm not going to say anymore. So they discuss religion and belief and what it means to be a good person or a good Christian. And then the other timeline, starting in 1912, we learn the background of Father Damien, but also the story of many of the people who live on this reservation. And central to the tale, except for that part, or in addition, I should say, in addition to that part between Father Damien and the other priest, is the friendship between Father Damien and Nanapush, who is one of the members of the Ojibwe and who lives on the reservation. And the book, I should also say, there is something not quite familiar. No, that's not the right word. There is something with Father Damien that is central to the story. And even though that is a slight spoiler, but you will learn that in the very first 5 pages, Father Damien is actually a woman named Agnes. So we learn how it came to be that Agnes took on this role of Father Damien, and just to make sure it's not a transgender issue, Agnes plays the role of Father Damien, but she identifies as a woman, so she's not transgender. Anyway, I just wanted to make that clear. So the book explores her history, the history of the people she encounters once she starts to work as a priest in 1912. It's about friendship, it's about identity, and it's about what it means to be a good person, whether in this book, a good Christian, but you can read the book asking yourself, what does it mean to be a good person? I loved the book. I loved the story. I loved the main character, and the topics were really engaging and interesting to me, especially the question of, what does it mean to be good, to lead a good life, but also the question of identity, of how we deal with it as Westerners, and how maybe different in a way the Ojibwe people deal with it. So it's a fascinating book and a beautiful book, and I can highly recommend it. Next up in the category tops is the book that surprised me the most. And for this category, I either pick a book that was surprising in the story that it told, or there was a twist or something that surprised me. But sometimes, like this month, I pick a book that I liked much more than I thought I would. And that is Sencho, The Terracotta Bride, first published in 2011. Sencho is a Malaysian writer based in the UK, and she writes fantasy. And this book, The Terracotta Bride, is a novelette, a fantasy novelette. So it's very short, 50, 60 pages something. And I really picked this book up on a whim on Script. I saw the cover, and you know me, I'm shallow. I loved the cover, and I thought, well, 50, 60 pages, not a big commitment. Why not? And I absolutely loved it. It's the story is set in hell, so all the people in this little novelette are dead, and our main character is a young woman, 19 years old, who died from an accident and who now lives in this sort of purgatory, because people are supposed to really die and reincarnate. And the hell is just like life. You know, she's married off to a man who died in his 50s. She's the second wife, and then there comes another wife into the story, made of terracotta, hence the title Terracotta Bride. And then we learn that there is something very strange going on with this terracotta figure. And the relationship between the terracotta bride and our main character, the young woman, and the man, the husband, and the other wife. It was just beautiful. It was beautifully told. It really endeared me. It was a delightful story, but still tackling some big issues, about love and reincarnation and what it means to be alive, or to love somebody, to fall in love with somebody. It was a delight, and I didn't expect that at all, to love it as much as I did. And so the Terracotta Bride made it into the tops and flops of July, in the tops category, of course. And the last book in the tops category is the best nonfiction I read in July, and that was kind of difficult to pick one. First of all, because I read a lot of nonfiction in July, and I read a lot of really, really good nonfiction. But still, when I looked at the list of the books that I read, one book definitely stood out, and that is Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall, published earlier this year in February. And I read this as a buddy read with Kathleen from Kathleen Ann, who just recently has started to make videos again. So I will link her channel down below. Go check her out. And we both really love this book. Mikki Kendall is a Black US American writer, cultural critic, activist, and this book is about feminism, Black feminism. And more importantly, it's about the blind spot that people like me, white feminists, have when it comes to Black women and Black feminism. So Kendall talks about topics that are important for Black women, Black feminists, and that are often overlooked by people like me. So she talks about what it means to grow up as a Black woman in the US, what kind of issues are really central to your life, and that often white feminism is kind of, we need more female CEOs, whereas Black women often struggle with the basics, survival. They struggle with poverty, which is not to mean that every Black woman is poor, or that there is no struggle with poverty with white women. But it's about the focus of feminism, how a lot of topics that are very much in the focus are actually white women's topics. And we neglect to incorporate topics that are more important than our topics to Black women. So it's about intersectionality, about how to include every woman if we want to have a feminist movement that is worth something. And it also, not only does it touch upon these topics and explains it very well, it's also extremely well written. It's very enjoyable as a read. So it's not, dry academic stuff. And Mickey Kendall, now I'm doing it wrong again. Mickey Kendall. I practiced this before. And I'm doing it wrong anyway. So Mickey Kendall also includes some of her own experiences. It's not a memoir, don't get me wrong. It's really a collection of essays organized by topic. But there are some personal experiences that she includes. And I learned an awful lot. Also to question myself with certain issues, because after all, I am a white feminist, so it's not that I don't do that stuff that Mickey Kendall talks about. So it was enlightening, illuminating, interesting, but also engaging and well written. And I had to pick this book for my July tops in the category nonfiction. So these were my 3 tops in the month of July. On to the flops. And there were no big, anger books. It just disappointments. And the first one is a memoir, so a nonfiction book, published earlier this year, Wayyetu Moore, The Dragons, the Giant, and the Women. Wayyetu Moore was born in Liberia and came to the United States during the first Liberian Civil War in the early 1990s, when she was about 6 or something, and she lives in the US. She teaches there, and I bought this book together with one of her novels, She Would Have Been King, which I haven't read yet. I decided to read the memoir first. And it was a real disappointment for me, which goes to show that sometimes a really interesting topic that I think this must be a great memoir. If it's, in my opinion, not done well, it just doesn't work for me. So this is the account of Wayyetu Moore's life from just before the start of the Civil War in Liberia, when she lives there with her father. Her mother is in the US. She studies there, and then she flees together with her father, and she comes to the US, to Texas first. So the first part is about the start of the Civil War and how she, together with her father, has to flee. And then the second part is about her coming to the US and her life there. The first part is told in chronological order. The second part is more loosely going back and forth. And this all sounds really interesting, but the book didn't grab me at all. I thought it was messy in the structure. It was not very well written. It was as if the author didn't really know what she wanted to say or what she wanted to tell me. And yeah, it just didn't come together for me, despite the subject, the topic that really interested me and that still interests me. But the way she told the story was just meh. Brian, I will pay you. Don't worry. It was just meh. So it was a really huge disappointment, and I should have read her novel first, because now I'm going into the novel with a kind of feeling, which is never good. But yeah, what can you do? So unfortunately, this memoir by Wayyetu Moore was a huge disappointment for me. And the second book in the flops category was just the same, a really disappointing read for me, and that was Patsy by Nicole Dennis Benn, published last year in 2019. Nicole Dennis Benn is a Jamaican writer who now lives in the US, and this is her second book. Her first book is Here Comes the Sun. I hope I got the title right. I haven't read it, so it doesn't really matter for this video. But this was her second book, and the premise sounded absolutely fascinating. It's about a young woman, Patsy, who grows up in Jamaica and who absolutely wants to go to the US. She lives in Jamaica with her mother and her young daughter, and she is able to get a visa to the US, but she has to leave her daughter behind. And then that's the not even the first third, I would say, of the book, and then we have her life in the US. Where she is an illegal immigrant. She has struggles to make ends meet. She has a couple of odd jobs, working as a maid, working as a cleaner. She her various affairs with men, and a central sort of relationship in the book is her friendship with Cicely, with whom Patsy was friends back in Jamaica, and Cicely immigrated to the US a couple of years before Patsy did. And Patsy has this dream of rekindling this love affair with her friend, and all goes wrong, of course. And again, like with the memoir, this sounds fascinating, and it was such a mess. I thought the idea of a woman leaving her child behind in order to follow her own dream is such an interesting topic, and not talked about a lot in fiction. I mean, if you have a mother leaving their children, if she is the evil incarnate, look at Steinbeck, for instance, But to approach this topic maybe from a different angle, and whether or not you as a woman are allowed to follow your dream, even if it means that you have to abandon a child, and whether that's different for a woman or a man, it's fascinating. And the coming of age, to find your own sexuality, so not coming of age, but finding your own sexuality, because Patsy finds a woman she loves then in the US. But it was such a not engagingly told. There were big gaps in how the story was told. So in the sense that we make a big jump in time, and in these 10 years there is no character development. I didn't really find anything to hold on with Patsy. And then the ending was just sugary and sweet, and I don't like that anyway. It's kind of a Hollywood ending, all is well that ends well. And there were so many interesting topics that were included, or that the author wanted to include in the book. Also, like I said, sexuality, but the issue of gender. Patsy's daughter, who was left back in Jamaica, struggles with her own sexuality and gender identity. But it just didn't work for some reason. And I read this together with Heidi, by the way, from my reading life. And we had the same issue with the book, which sort of was good for me, that I didn't feel it's just me. I think it came together for Heidi better in the end. But yeah, it was just not a successful novel for me, despite the subjects that were interesting and the topics that were interesting. So there you go. 2 disappointing reads in July. Anyway, these were my July tops and flops. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you're still safe and healthy, and please stay that way. Looking forward to your comments as always, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.